So we talked about how to name point slides and planes and what those things were. Today we're going to look at segments. So that's our topic for today, segments. And on your classroom, you'll see that this is section 1.2, so in case you ever need that. Okay, so let's just talk about segments a little bit. The distance between 2 points, A and B, can be written as the length of segment AB. Now, with a segment, we put a hat on it, just like we did with lines. But instead of having arrows at the end, we just leave it as without the arrows, okay? So the length of AB, we just write as AB without a hat. So if we're naming the segment, we're going to use a hat. And if we're talking about how long the segment is, we're not going to use a hat, okay? So like if I was looking at this picture right here, I have A is, I would count from A to B, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that distance, that length of AB is 4. Okay, now if the length of AB equals the length of CD, then the segments are congruent. So in geometry, if we write it like this, we're talking about the lengths are equal. And if we're talking about the names of the segments, then we write hats on them. And we say AB is equal to CD, but we don't just leave it like that. We write AB with a hat and CD with a hat and the equal sign with a hat. So if you have no hats, then nothing has a hat. But if you put a hat on the equal sign to call it congruent, then you need a hat on your segments. Okay, so we're either fancy with hats or we're not fancy. Nobody's wearing a hat, but we're all the same. All right, now we do have something called the segment addition postulate, and it says that if you have A and B and C. So if you have a big long segment AC and B is in the middle, then this first half plus your second half equals the whole thing. So the way that we would write that in geometry is AB plus BC equals AC. And we're going to practice using that here. Okay, so like for example 1, if PQ is 9 and QR is 28, and we want to find the whole thing, we just say 9 plus 28 is 37. Okay, and we can box that because remember we box things in this class when we're done with it. Okay, so for this number 2, if I know that QR is 17 and I know that the whole thing is 21, how could I find the missing part? Well, I could say PQ plus 17 equals 21. Subtract 17 from both sides to get PQ equals 4. Okay? Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Mrs. Oaks, this is so easy. I know how to add and subtract numbers. Yes, you do. Very good. So now we are going to add things that aren't just plain numbers, but are algebraic expressions. So for number 3, I have that the whole thing is 71. So I could set up an equation, 8x minus 17 plus 5x minus 3 equals 71, and then I could solve that. Okay, so we're going to practice. I'm going to review with you how to solve all the equations for today. We have 8x and 5x. That makes 13x. Minus 17 and minus 3 makes minus 20. And then I could add 20 to both sides and get 13x equals 91 and divide by 13 and get x equals 7. Okay, remember when I get to the bottom, I'm going to box it. All right, so number 4 is similar. This time we know that the whole thing is 14x minus 8. So I'm going to say 9x plus 2 plus 5, so this TU plus UV, that whole thing, equals 14x minus 8. So then I say that this is 9x plus 7 over here subtract 9x from both sides, add 8 to both sides, and that would give me 15 equals 5x divided by 5. I get x equals 3. If I was in Algebra 1, I would be done now. But look at what my question says. It doesn't say find x. It says find TU. So now that I know what x is, I have to plug that into the x in TU. Okay, so I'm going to say 9 times 3 plus 2. That's 27 plus 2 equals 29. So that's my final answer. That's why it's so important to box your work, because sometimes we don't stop when we get x. All right, number 5. This time I know number 5 is just like number 4. We add these two things that we know, and that's going to equal our JL. So go ahead and take a minute and set that up on your own. Stop your video. You should have had 3x minus 1 plus 27 equals 5x plus 2. Okay, so that's going to make 3x plus 26 equals 5x plus 2. Okay, subtract 3x, subtract 2. You get 24 equals 2x. X equals 12. Am I done? No, it doesn't say find x. It says find JL. So I know I'm going to have to put this in here. I'm going to have to put it in for KL. 3 times 12 minus 1. That's going to be 24 minus 1 is 23. Okay, so if I want to find the whole thing, I'm going to take 27 plus 23, and that's going to equal 50. Wait, I did something wrong. Oh, just kidding. I see. Hopefully you see it too. That 3 times 12 is actually 36, minus 1 is 35. So when I add 35, that gives me 62. And that's my final answer. All right, I want you to stop the video and practice doing number 6 on your own, and raise your hand when you're done. I'll come around and check it before you can move on. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so hopefully I checked number 6, but we're going to go ahead and do number 7. This is one where, again, I'm going to really practice labeling my picture. That's going to be a real help to you. 13x minus 5, that's SK. 2x plus 9 is KY. And the whole thing is 36 minus x. So I'm going to set that up. I'm going to say 13x minus 5 plus 2x plus 9 equals 36 minus x. When I simplify, I get 15x plus 4 equals 36 minus x. To undo this x, I'm going to have to add x to both sides and then subtract 4. So I'm going to get 16x equals 32. Divide by 16, x equals 2. So I'm going to put that in place of 2. But then look, I have to find each value. So now I have to plug that back into SK. 13 times 2 minus 5. 13 times 2 is 26. Minus 5 is 21. And then 2 times 2 plus 9. That's 4 plus 9 is 13. And I can add these. I can add these right here to get SY, which makes 34. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the midpoint. Okay, so the midpoint of a segment is a point that divides the segment into two congruent segments. Okay, that's very important. It's saying that doesn't just cut it anywhere, it cuts it exactly in the middle. A line, ray, or segment that intersects a segment at its midpoint is said to bisect the segment and is called the segment bisector. So I could have a point, that's in the middle, that's called a midpoint, or I could have a line that goes through, and that's called the segment bisector. So in this picture on the left here, we have B is the midpoint of AC. And remember, I'm putting a segment hat on that AC. And then line L here is a segment bisector of segment AC. So line L is a segment bisector of AC. Again, putting that hat on that segment. All right, so let's try working that a little bit. Here in number 8, it says that Q is the midpoint. So that means that PQ and QR have to be the same. So I'm going to set that up. 7x minus 16 equals 4x plus 2. Do you see how important the vocabulary is? If you don't know what the word midpoint is, you can't create your equation to solve. So now that we have our equation, we'll go ahead and solve that. Subtract 4x from both sides, add 16, and that gives us 3x equals 18. So x equals 6. When we get our x, we should always look and see, is that what we were looking for? Yes. Yes, it was. We were just finding x. Number 9 is exactly the same as number 8. So I want you to set it up the same way. I want you to put GH equal to HI, and then I want you to stop your video and solve it. Raise your hand when you're done. Don't forget on this one that you're finding GH, not X. So after you find X, you're going to have to plug that back in to find GH. All right, number 10. R is the midpoint of QS, and we're finding QS. So first I'm going to find X here. And I'm going to set these two equal because midpoint means in the middle. It means they have to be equal. Okay, so here I'm going to get 33 equals 3x. I'm going to divide by 3. X equals 11. Am I supposed to find x? Am I done? No, it doesn't say that. It says find QS. Okay, so I'm going to first find QR by doing 2 times 11 plus 16. That's 22 plus 16 is 38. And I know if this is 38, the midpoint means this thing has to be the same. So at the end, QS is going to be 2 times 38, which is 76. That's what I'm boxing. All right, number 11 is a little bit different because if you see, we've got X's in our picture, but we're supposed to find Y. All right, so what I'm going to do is I am first going to find X by setting these equal. Midpoint means that these have to be equal. These little slashy things, we didn't talk about this earlier, these little slashy things are called congruent marks, and they show that FG is equal to GH. So I'm going to put 4x plus 3 equals 7x minus 12, and I'm going to solve that. So I get x equals 3. Okay, so now I have to figure out, I know that FH is 6x minus 2. So I'm going to have to find this whole distance FH by substituting in the 3, and then I can set the 6x minus 2 equal to that. So 4 times 3 plus 3 would be 12 plus 3 is 15. So FG is 15. Since this is a midpoint, that means GH also has to be 15. that means FH has to equal 30. So I'm going to take that 6y minus 2, which is your FH, and I'm going to equal that to 30. And then I can add 2. Oh, does anybody see where I made my mistake? I sure did. I'm going to erase this because I didn't show this step right here, which meant I made a mistake. I'm going to divide by 3. So actually at x equals 5. Okay, so this 4 times 5 plus 3 equals 23. So this is 23, and this is 23. So actually, FH equals 46. So see how even as long as I've done this, I'm still making mistakes. That's okay. We're learning from them. We take 6y minus 2 equals 46. And so when I add 2, I get 6y equals 48. Divide by 6, so y equals 8.